The wine glass struck me just above my left eyebrow. Not a slip, not an accident. Valerie threw it hard, with her whole arm, like she was pitching fastballs in a league I never signed up for. The sound of shattering glass mixed with my daughter-in-law's voice. You're being selfish. Before we go any further, take a second to subscribe, hit the hype button and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? Warm liquid ran down my face, not wine. That had sprayed across the white tablecloth seconds before impact. This was coming from inside me. Trent stood up, chair scraping backward. Dad, you have empty bedrooms, 3 of them. I touched my forehead. My fingers came away red. The cut wasn't deep, but it was clean and steady, dripping onto my shirt collar like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. Valerie's chest heaved, her face flushed. For a moment she looked surprised at herself, but then her jaw set. We're family. Family helps each other. Easter dinner. Supposed to be ham and potatoes and maybe some awkward small talk about the weather. Instead, I was bleeding at my own table while my son and his wife demanded I hand over my house to her parents. I smiled. Not because I thought it was funny. I smiled because 22 years of running a hotel taught me one critical skill. Never let them see you break, especially when you're already planning your next move. Excuse me, I said quietly. I grabbed a dish towel, pressed it to my forehead, and walked toward the door. Dad, where are you going? Trent called after me. Emergency room. This needs stitches. Wait, we need to talk about this. I stopped at the doorway, the dish towel already turning a pale, sickening pink against my skin. A dull pulse throbbed beneath the cut, matching my heartbeat. I looked back one last time, Trent standing behind the table, face twisted with panic and denial, Valerie rigid and glassy-eyed, as if she couldn't decide whether to be furious or frightened. No, Trent, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. We really don't. The night air outside hit me like a cold slap, sharp enough to make me blink. My truck sat in the driveway, the same truck I'd driven through storms, late-night emergencies, and decades of long shifts at the hotel. Tonight it felt heavier, as if it already sensed the weight of what was coming. I got in, started the engine, and watched a faint streak from the wound slip from the towel onto my shirt. My hand shook, not from fear, but from something colder, something that had been building for years. I pulled out my phone and typed 3 quick texts while the engine warmed up. First to Saul Mercer, my attorney. Phase 1 complete. Easter dinner went exactly as expected, documentation incoming. Second to Cole Avery. Hey, old friend, might need that advice you offered last month. Third to 911. I need to report an incident and get medical attention. 412 Maple Ridge Drive. Then I waited, engine humming quietly, a slow, warm line from the wound seeping through the towel and down my temple. My pulse had settled into an eerie calmness, as if my body had gone into some kind of automatic survival mode. 2 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered in my rearview mirror, bathing the interior of the truck in a harsh, strobing glow. The officer who approached was young, maybe 30, with a posture that snapped from routine to alarm the moment his flashlight caught the injury. Sir, are you injured? Yes, I said, keeping my voice level. My daughter-in-law threw a wine glass at me during dinner. It's all on my home security cameras. I'd like to file a report, and then I need to get this looked at. His eyebrows shot up, but he didn't question me. He called for backup and an ambulance immediately. I declined the ambulance. No way was I letting Valerie spin this into hysteria, but agreed to wait for the second unit. Through my side mirror, I watched Trent and Valerie step out onto the porch. Trent looked confused, desperate. Valerie's face drained of color the instant she saw the police car. She clutched her arms around herself like someone who finally realized the tide was turning. When the second officer arrived, he took my statement. I was calm, deliberate, precise. Yes, it was intentional. No, there was no argument that led up to it. Yes, I had video footage. Yes, I wanted to press charges. As he walked toward the house, Trent rushed out to intercept him, hands raised defensively. It was an accident. She didn't mean to, he shouted, loud enough for me to hear every word. But I'd already sent the video to Saul, time-stamped, cloud-backed, high-definition evidence of Valerie winding up like a pitcher in a minor league stadium. 20 minutes later, I was in the ER getting 6 neat stitches while Valerie was being read her rights in my kitchen. The nurse was an older woman with kind eyes, the kind that saw too many family disasters to be shocked by mine. Do you want to talk about it? She asked gently as she cleaned the cut. Not much to say, I replied. Sometimes family forgets you're a person, not a resource. She nodded like she'd heard thousands of versions of that same sentence. When she stepped away, I texted Saul again. ER report will be ready in an hour. Send courier. His reply was instant, as if he'd been waiting for the message. Already arranged. Rest. We start tomorrow. But I didn't rest. Couldn't. Instead, I thought of Trent as a teenager, yelling that I cared more about the hotel than him. I thought of Morgan, my wife, sitting in the cold outside a movie theater, waiting for a ride I'd promised but couldn't give because a pipe burst in the West Wing and the place had been flooding. I thought of the taxi that ran a red light and took her from me. Trent blamed me for that. Said if I'd kept my promise and been there, she'd still be alive. Maybe he was right. But that didn't give him the right to this. I drove home after midnight. The house was dark, silent, unnervingly untouched, except for the battlefield of the dining room. The Easter dinner sat exactly where we'd left it. Cold ham, smeared potatoes, broken glass sparkling like ice among the congealed stains on the tablecloth. I took photos. Every angle, every shard. The overturned chair, the red droplets marking the exact path the glass had taken. Then I cleaned it. Slowly. Methodically. The same way I'd cleaned hundreds of hotel rooms when we were short-staffed and I needed to show the team how a real deep clean was done. By 2 a.m, the kitchen looked as if nothing had happened, except I knew better. I always knew better. By 3, I had the security footage on my laptop, scrubbing through every second, marking timestamps, exporting files. By 4, exhaustion finally pulled me under. I fell asleep in my chair, phone buzzing in my hand with a message from Cole. Call me when you're up. Got information you need to hear. At 7 sharp, Cole Avery showed up at my door with 2 coffees and a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. We'd known each other since high school. He'd gone into law enforcement, I'd gone into hospitality. Different roads, same stubborn streak. Through marriages, births, farewells, promotions, and the quiet tragedies life hands out, we'd stayed connected. Now he stood in my kitchen, my freshly cleaned kitchen, with a look that meant something bad was coming. You look terrible, he said, setting the coffee in front of me. You should see the other guy. I did. Arrest report came through last night. Valerie posted bail at 3 a.m. He sat at the table, settling into the same chair Valerie had been sitting in when she threw the glass. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of us. But that's not why I'm here. He opened the folder. Screenshots, printed messages, social media posts, a month of digital breadcrumbs. Trent's been busy, Cole said. Very busy. The first image was a group text from 2 weeks ago. Everything's arranged. Dad agreed. You can move in after Easter. He's got 3 empty bedrooms just sitting there. My stomach tightened so fast, I tasted bitterness in my throat. There's more, Cole said, flipping the page. Valerie posted in a family group chat about buying curtains. Her mother's been shopping for furniture. They've been planning this for a while. Planning to move into my house? I murmured. Planning to move into your house, he confirmed, without ever asking you. I took a slow sip of coffee. It was bitter, but grounding. They assumed I'd just roll over. They assumed, Cole said quietly, that you're a lonely old man who'd be grateful for the company. And it gets worse. They've been telling people you're senile. Valerie told her HR department you asked for help managing your affairs. The coffee cup paused halfway to my mouth. She what? She's been laying legal groundwork, Cole said, tapping the folder. If you'd agreed to anything, even casually, she could argue they were establishing residency. After a few months, it becomes extremely hard to evict them, especially if she paints you as mentally declining. I set the cup down slowly because if I didn't, I might have hurled it across the room. How much of this can you prove? All of it, Cole said simply. Every screenshot is dated. Every group chat has timestamps. And here's the kicker. Valerie's father filed a change of address request 4 days ago. To your address. I laughed, a short, broken sound that held no humor. They were that confident. No, Cole said. They were that stupid. They documented their own downfall. He pushed the folder toward me. This is your copy. The originals are at my office. Nothing here is confidential police intel. It's all public or shared through people you mutually know. I'm not crossing lines. I'm giving you what any halfway decent investigator could have dug up. Why? I asked quietly. He stood, finishing his coffee. Because you're my friend, he said. Because Morgan was good to my family when my dad was sick. And because Trent needs to learn that consequences exist. And then he left me alone with the folder. A thick, damning testament to what my own son had been planning. There were photos I hadn't seen yet. Angles and exchanges that made my stomach twist tighter with each flip of the page. Screenshots of Valerie and Trent discussing which bedroom her parents would take, as casually as if they were choosing seats at a restaurant. A text from Lydia, Valerie's mother, asking about cabinet space in her new kitchen. She even added a smiley face. My kitchen. My house. The house I'd bought with money I scraped together one exhausted night shift at a time. One plumbing disaster at a time. One angry guest at a time. Every inch of it carried the ghost of a sacrifice I'd made. Missed birthdays, cold meals eaten alone in the hotel office, and a marriage that lasted through storms most people wouldn't survive. Morgan had believed in me, in what I was building, long before it looked like anything worth believing in. And now my son had tried to give it away like a party favor. I pulled out my phone and called Saul. "Tell me you're ready to move," I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've been ready since you sent me that video last night. What do you need?" "I need every financial connection between me and Trent severed. Loan guarantees, credit cards, business accounts, everything he's tied to through me, I want it cut." "That'll crater his credit score," he warned. "Good," I said without hesitation. There was a pause, a long one. When Saul spoke again, his voice was softer, threading concern through professionalism. "Kai, I have to ask, are you sure about this? He's your son." "He stopped being my son when he promised my house to strangers." "Valerie's parents aren't strangers." "They are to me," I said sharply. "I've met them twice. Both times they commented on how much my furniture must have cost, like they were mentally pricing out what they'd take first." I looked around my living room. Every piece had a story, every story had a cost. "Saul, I spent 22 years building a business so I could have peace in retirement. I earned this, and they're trying to take it because they think I'm too old, too weak, or too guilty to fight back." "Guilty?" "Trent blames me for Morgan's accident," I said quietly. "Always has. I think he believes making me miserable is some kind of justice." Saul didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was firm again. "I'll have the paperwork ready by noon. Everything you're guaranteeing for him disappears. He'll get letters from every bank by end of business tomorrow." "Thank you." "Kai? One more thing. If this goes where I think it's going, you need to be prepared for them to escalate." "Let them," I said, and I meant it. I hung up and reopened the folder. I went through every screenshot, every message, every smug assumption, a written record of Trent planning to colonize my life like it belonged to him, by birthright instead of sweat and sacrifice. Around 9 o'clock, a sharp knock rattled the quiet of the house. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. A car I didn't recognize, 2 people getting out. Lydia and Frank, Valerie's parents, staring at my house with the eager entitlement of people arriving at a vacation home they believed had already been deeded to them. I opened the door before they could knock again. Lydia smiled, the kind of smile that was stretched too tight, brittle at the edges. "Kai, we heard about the incident last night. How terrible. But we're here now, and we brought our things." She gestured toward the car. The back seat was packed with suitcases, stuffed so full the zippers looked ready to burst. One bag even had a bright green ribbon on the handle, like it was ready for a cruise ship. Frank stood behind her, hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze scanning my property like a man taking mental inventory. "Trent said the garage has space for my tools. I'm a woodworker. Thought I'd set up a little workshop." For a moment, all I did was stare, not at them, but at the audacity, the absolute certainty that their fantasy was reality. Then I smiled, the same calm, controlled smile I'd given Valerie the night before. "Trent lied to you," I said simply. Lydia's smile jerked like a puppet string had been cut. "Excuse me?" "Trent told you that you could move in, that everything was arranged, that I agreed." I shifted my weight, hand braced on the door. "I never agreed. You're not moving in. You're not welcome here." Frank's expression darkened instantly. He stepped closer, shoulders tensing. "Now wait just a minute." "No," I said, cutting him off with the authority I once used to break up fights in the hotel lobby at 2 a.m. "You wait. You've been planning this for weeks without ever speaking to me. You changed your mailing address to my home, you bought furniture, you measured my windows, all without my knowledge or consent." Lydia's voice sharpened like a knife. "Trent promised. Trent doesn't own this house. Trent doesn't make decisions about this house. And Trent's promises are worth exactly what you paid for them." I began closing the door. "Leave. Now." Frank stepped forward again. Too close, the sour scent of alcohol wafting from him. At 9 a.m. "You're making a big mistake, old man." "The mistake was yours," I said quietly, "thinking you could take what someone else earned." I closed the door, locked it, and walked to the living room where the security monitor sat. Through the camera feed, I watched them stand on my porch, Lydia fuming, Frank pacing, both of them staring at their overstuffed suitcases like they were waiting for reality to change its mind. They didn't leave for another 10 minutes, just stood on my porch, arguing with each other, looking at their car full of suitcases. Finally, Frank kicked my garbage bin. Lydia pulled him back toward the car. I recorded all of it. Then I called Saul again. They just tried to move in. You're kidding. I have video. I need a cease and desist letter sent to all 4 of them. Trent, Valerie, Lydia, and Frank. Trespassing warnings, no contact orders, the works. I'll draft them today. I sent him the new footage. Then I sat down and did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I looked at photos of Morgan, her smile, her laugh, the way she used to wait up for me after late shifts at the hotel, even when I told her not to. The night she waited for a ride that never came. I'm sorry, I whispered to her picture. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm here now, and I'm not letting them take what we built. The bank letters hit Trent's mailbox the next morning, 5 of them, thick envelopes stamped urgent, all requiring signatures. Same-day delivery. No room for denial, no room for confusion. I knew the exact moment he opened his door because Cole texted me a photo. Trent stood on his porch in wrinkled pajamas, hair sticking up like he'd slept in panic. His face was twisted with the kind of confusion that comes right before fear, like he couldn't decide whether to be angry or terrified. By noon, Trent started calling. I didn't answer. By 2, he was pounding on my door, ringing the bell over and over. I didn't open it. By 4, he had switched to voicemails, messages that started hot with rage and slowly dissolved into thin, cracked desperation. Dad, what did you do? The banks are saying you removed your guarantee. My credit cards are frozen. They're calling loans. Dad, please, we need to talk about this. His voice cracked on the last word. I listened to each voicemail exactly once, saved them, then deleted the notifications. I wasn't interested in his panic, only in the record of it. At 5, Saul called. It's done, he said. Every financial connection is severed. He's going to feel this immediately. Good. Kai, Saul continued, voice tightening. His credit score dropped 180 points in 6 hours. Not my problem. It kind of is, Saul countered gently. He's telling people you're sabotaging him. Valerie's parents are threatening legal action. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my forehead where the stitches tugged faintly. On what grounds? They're claiming a verbal contract, that Trent promised them housing on your behalf, creating an expectation of tenancy. I laughed. A raw, honest, humorless sound. Let them try. They won't win, Saul said, but they can make noise. And there's more. Valerie's company received your medical records, the ER report, the police statement, the footage. Their HR department opened an ethics investigation this morning. That made me sit down, slowly. How fast? Fast enough. She's been placed on leave, pending investigation into violent conduct and potential liability issues. I exhaled. The weight of it hit me in the chest. She's going to lose her job. Probably. Throwing a glass hard enough to require stitches isn't something HR can ignore, especially when it's documented from multiple angles. I rubbed my face, feeling the heat gather behind my eyes. I don't know, Saul. Part of me feels like I just nuked my own family. You didn't throw the glass. No, I said. I just made sure everyone saw it. Kai? His voice softened. You're protecting yourself. That's not revenge. That's survival. Maybe he was right, but survival felt a lot like war. That evening, far from sleeping, I drove to my old hotel. The place I'd poured 2 decades of my life into, brick by brick, guest by guest, until it transformed from a cheap roadside stop into a boutique destination with a waiting list every weekend. I didn't actively run it anymore. 2 years ago, I slid into passive ownership. But I still had keys, still had a drawer in the office with my old pens, still felt like the building remembered me, even if the people didn't. The night manager, Rita, a sharp, capable woman who'd been 19 when I hired her, looked up as soon as I walked in. Mr. Dornell, she said, surprised. Didn't expect to see you. Needed to clear my head, I answered. Mind if I sit in the office for a bit? It's your office. It wasn't. Not anymore. But I appreciated the gesture. I sat at the desk, letting my hands graze the familiar grooves in the wood. I had spent thousands of hours there, balancing books, hiring staff, firing staff, solving problems nobody else wanted to touch. I'd handled everything from clogged toilets to guest fistfights to health inspectors showing up at dawn. Trent always said I loved this place more than him. He was wrong. I loved this place because it allowed me to provide for him, for Morgan, for the life I thought we'd build. A future where maybe I wouldn't work 70-hour weeks. Maybe I'd be there. But by the time that future came, Morgan was in the ground and Trent's love had curdled into resentment. I opened the desk drawer. There was a folder of old employee records. One labeled T. Dornell caught my eye. Hired at 23, fired at 25. Reasons neatly typed: chronic tardiness, inappropriate conduct with staff, misuse of company funds, unauthorized use of guest rooms for personal parties. I had given him 4 chances. 4. He had blown every single one, and then somehow made it my fault. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you are, old man. Stop hiding." I showed it to Rita. "Can you pull security footage from the parking lot?" She frowned, but nodded. "What's going on?" "Probably nothing," I said, "but I'd like to see if anyone's watching the building." A few keystrokes later, the camera feed popped up. There, in the third row back, sat a car I recognized from Valerie's social media. A cousin's car, always involved in some birthday party or family barbecue she liked to post online. "That vehicle belongs to someone who was told to stay away from me," I said calmly. "I'm going out the back. If he follows, call the police." "Mr. Dornell?" "I'll be fine, just making sure he knows I see him." I slipped out the service exit, got into my truck, and pulled onto the main road, checking my mirrors every few seconds. Sure enough, the cousin's car rolled out behind me like a shadow that thought it was stealthy. Good. I took back roads I'd memorized decades ago when late-night emergencies were normal, industrial areas, long stretches with no streetlights, places where mistakes showed quickly. The cousin tried to keep up. Tried. Near the old warehouse district, I hit a long straightaway, accelerated, then slammed the brakes and turned hard into an impossibly narrow alley. He didn't see it coming. He didn't react in time. His car scraped, veered, then slammed into a row of dumpsters with a crunch of metal and a shriek of bending plastic. I pulled over, got out, walked back with my phone recording. He was standing beside the crumpled hood, face pale with the shock of someone realizing he was in far too deep. "You all right?" I asked, voice steady. You made me crash." "No," I said. "You followed me illegally. I drove legally. You failed to navigate safely." I raised my phone, taking a photo of his license plate. "I'm reporting this, and the threatening text you sent 20 minutes ago." I have your number," I cut in. "It's registered to your name. My attorney already has a copy." I stepped closer. Not aggressive, just undeniable. "Tell Valerie that sending people to intimidate me isn't going to work. Tell her that every move she makes, I'm 3 steps ahead. And tell her that if this happens again, I won't be polite." I left him there, shaking, staring at the crushed front end of a car he couldn't afford to fix. At home, I sent Saul and Cole the photos and video. Cole replied almost instantly, "I'll have a unit check on him. This is harassment, adding it to the file." Saul's reply came a little later. "We now have enough for a restraining order. Want me to file?" I thought for a moment, then typed, "Not yet. Let them think they still have options." That night, I sat in my dark living room, lights off, house quiet, silence thick. I thought about Morgan, thought about Trent as a little boy before resentment replaced love, thought about the version of myself who believed hard work and sacrifice could build a good life. That version was naive, but not wrong. He built something worth protecting, and now it was my job to defend it. The cousin confessed. Cole called me 3 days later to tell me. He folded the moment we mentioned obstruction charges. Said Valerie paid him $200 to keep an eye on you and make sure you knew they were serious. Did he sign a statement? He did. And he's cooperating fully because he doesn't want any of this in his record. He's got a kid and a job he doesn't want to lose. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. What now? Now we add it to the evidence pile. Saul's restraining order looks stronger every day. But I still wasn't ready to file it. Not yet, because restraining orders were defensive, and I wasn't playing defense anymore. I spent the next week systematically dismantling every support structure Trent had built on top of my name. The car lease I'd co-signed, called the dealership, explained the situation, provided documentation that Trent had misrepresented his income using my guarantees. They repossessed the car within 48 hours. The apartment lease Valerie's parents were trying to break early because they thought they'd be moving into my house. I sent their landlord a certified letter explaining that no such arrangement existed and that I would not be providing alternative housing. Their lease break fell through. They were stuck paying rent on a place they'd already mentally abandoned. The credit cards Trent had opened using my address for billing? I contacted each company, provided police reports showing the Easter incident and evidence of fraud. Every card was frozen pending investigation. Trent's phone started ringing constantly. Collection calls, bank calls, dealership calls. I know because he started leaving voicemails again. Dad, they took my car. How am I supposed to get to work? Dad, Valerie's credit is tanking because of you. Dad, her parents are furious. They're threatening to sue. Dad, please, just talk to me. But I didn't talk. I documented. Every voicemail, every text. Every time he showed up at my house and pounded on the door. Every time Valerie's parents drove by slowly, glaring at my windows. Saul loved it. You're building an airtight case for harassment. When you're ready to move, they won't have a leg to stand on. Valerie's HR investigation concluded on a Friday. She was terminated. Not suspended, not reprimanded, terminated. Cause, violent conduct creating liability risk. Evidence, police report, medical records, video documentation, and witness statements from 3 people who'd been at my house for Easter dinner and saw the whole thing. I found out because Trent called me, actually sobbing. She lost her job. Dad, she lost her job because of you. She lost her job because she threw a glass at my head. It was an accident. Trent, I have video of her winding up like a pitcher. There's no universe where that's an accident. You're destroying our lives. No, I'm removing myself from your lives. There's a difference. He hung up on me. An hour later, Valerie called from Trent's phone. Her voice was ice. You're going to regret this. I already regret having you as family. Anything else can't be worse. You don't know what we're capable of. Neither do you. That's the problem. She hung up too. That night, Saul sent me a new document. Found something. Thought you'd want to see it. It was a partial property transfer request. Drafted by Valerie 3 months ago. Never filed, but prepared. Using old hotel business documents where I'd listed Trent as an emergency contact, she'd tried to create a legal argument that he had partial claim to my assets. It wouldn't have worked. The documents were outdated, the argument was weak, and no judge would have honored it. But she'd tried. She'd actually tried to legally steal my house. Can we use this? I asked Saul. It shows intent, premeditation, planning. Combined with everything else, it paints a picture of systematic manipulation. Good, because I want that picture framed and mounted when this is over. The next morning, I restructured everything. The house went into an irrevocable trust. I was the sole beneficiary during my lifetime. Upon my passing, it would go to charity. Not to Trent, to charity. Saul handled the paperwork. This is extreme. This is necessary. He's your son. He's a stranger who happens to share my name. The trust was finalized within a week. Bulletproof, untouchable. Even if I changed my mind later, the terms were locked. Trent would inherit nothing. I should have felt guilty. I felt free. Valerie's parents showed up again on a Tuesday morning, this time with a lawyer, not a good one. One look at his cheap suit and crooked tie told me everything. Mr. Dornell, I'm representing Lydia and Frank Mallow. No, you're not, I said. They don't have a case. They have a delusion that my house was promised to them. That's not legal. It's a psychological issue. He blinked, adjusted his glasses. Sir, my clients were led to believe, by their own greed. I have proof I never agreed to anything. I have video of their daughter committing assault, and Trent's credit history showing financial disaster. I looked past him at Lydia and Frank. You want to sue me? My attorney will happily take your money. Perhaps we could discuss. The lawyer tried. There's nothing to discuss. Trent has no authority over my house, promising it was fraud. Pursue this, and I'll countersue for harassment and attempted coercion. Frank shoved past the lawyer, red-faced and smelling of vodka. You think you're so smart? Sitting in your big house like a king? We're family. You're not my family. I've met you twice. Both times you treated my home like it was already yours. Trent promised. Trent lied, and you believed him because it was convenient. Lydia burst into fake tears. We gave up our apartment. We'll be homeless because of you. You didn't give up anything. Your lease runs 6 more months. I confirmed with your landlord. You're not homeless. You're just disappointed your free ride ended. Her tears stopped instantly, replaced with pure hatred. The lawyer looked uneasy. Mr. Dornell, maybe if we... No, leave my property. 10 seconds. I took out my phone and counted. By 6, the lawyer was backing away. Lydia dragged Frank with her. At the sidewalk, I heard the lawyer mutter, You didn't tell me about the video evidence. They argued in their car before finally driving off. I'd recorded everything. Then I called Saul. They showed up with a lawyer. Please tell me you filmed it. Every second, including Frank nearly swinging at me and Lydia's performance about being homeless. Send it. That's intimidation. Another mark on the harassment file. He paused. What are the odds they actually file something? Low, but incompetent attorneys exist. We'll prepare. Kai, how far are you planning to go? I thought of the wine glass, the injury, the lies, the plan to take my house. Scorched earth. Saul exhaled. All right, I'll start preparing. After the call, I finally sat down to do something I'd been avoiding for weeks. Something that had weighed on me day and night. Something I kept pushing aside because I knew once I did it, there'd be no turning back. I wrote Trent a letter. Not a text, not an email, not a message typed out in the heat of anger. A real letter, on good heavy paper, the kind that feels like it carries weight even before words are on it. Some messages require permanence. Some truths deserve ink that won't disappear with a deleted thread. I began with Trent, stared at it for a moment, crossed it out, and started again. It felt wrong to begin with familiarity when our relationship had eroded to something unrecognizable. I wrote that his mother and I had raised him to understand consequences, effort, and respect. Values we lived by, values he grew up watching, values he chose to reject the moment they required something from him. I reminded him how he blamed me for circumstances I couldn't control, how he twisted his mother's passing into something he could turn against me, or how he allowed Valerie to feed the worst parts of his character until they became the only parts he listened to. I reminded him of the house, how he'd promised it to strangers without my knowledge or permission, months of planning, not a slip of judgment. How he allowed Valerie's parents to change their mailing address to mine, to prepare their move as though my home was already theirs, to walk into my life like they were entitled to it. And when I refused to surrender what I'd worked for, he and Valerie tried everything: manipulation, pressure, ambushes, legal traps. They followed me, showed up at my workplace, ignored restraining orders, filed false claims with the hope one would stick. I wrote plainly, without dressing it up, I am not his retirement plan or safety net. Everything I own came from decades of effort he resented. He did not participate in building it, and he will not benefit from it. He has earned nothing except the consequences he now faces. I told him the house had been placed in an irrevocable trust. He will never inherit it. When my life eventually reaches its natural end, that home, every beam, every brick, will go to charity. Every safety net I once offered him, loans, guarantees, help in emergencies, has been dissolved permanently. And our relationship is finished. No apology, however heartfelt, could undo what he attempted. He launched a war thinking I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. He lost, not because I'm cruel, but because I refused to let him treat me like prey. I signed it simply, Dad. I sealed the envelope, sent it certified to his motel, and returned home. All that was left was to wait for whatever came next. The response arrived 2 days later. Not from Trent, from Valerie. She called from a number I didn't recognize. I nearly declined it, but curiosity pierced through my caution. You're a monster, she said immediately. No greeting, no pause, just venom sprayed through the receiver. I'm a man who protected himself, I replied, steady and calm. You destroyed my family. I removed myself from your scheme, I said. There's a difference. My parents are facing criminal charges because of you. Your parents are facing criminal charges because they committed fraud, I said. I didn't forge signatures. I didn't encourage them to lie on disability forms. I didn't make your father work under the table while collecting benefits. I simply informed the people who should have known. You're going to burn in whatever place people like you go. Maybe, I said, but I'll arrive there honestly. She hung up with a sharp click. My phone automatically records calls from unknown numbers now, so the moment the line went silent, I forwarded the recording to Saul. His response came within minutes. She's unraveling. Good. Keep documenting everything. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went back to work at the hotel. Not because I needed to. The staff had everything under control. Rita and her team ran the place with the precision of people who respected their jobs and respected me. But I needed to reconnect with the life I had built long before Trent decided to rewrite his version of it. I needed to remind myself of what my sacrifices had created. The business he once mocked as the reason I was never home. I walked through the lobby, greeting guests with quiet nods. I checked the registration desk, stepped through the hallways, observed the team. Everything was clean, orderly, efficient, the kind of excellence that comes from years of sweat, persistence, and choices his generation never understood. It was exactly as it should be, exactly as I intended it to stay. Rita found me in the back office, looking at old employee photos on the wall. Mr. Dornell, everything okay? Just remembering, I said. I pointed to a photo from 15 years ago. That was the year we almost went under, remember? She nodded. The lawsuit from that guest who claimed food poisoning. Except he didn't have food poisoning. He had a hangover and wanted a free stay, but we had to fight it anyway. Cost us $30,000 in legal fees. You worked triple shifts that whole month to make up the money. I did. I looked at another photo. That was the year of the flood. Water main burst, destroyed 12 rooms. Insurance tried to deny the claim. I spent 6 months fighting them while doing all the repairs myself. Rita stood next to me, looking at the photos. You built something good here, something that lasts. I tried to teach Trent that things worth having are worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for. I turned to her. He never got it. Some people don't. They just see the result and think it came easy. I nodded. His mother got it. She used to bring me dinner during overnight shifts, sit with me while I did paperwork. Never complained about the hours or the stress or the nights I couldn't make it home. She was special. She was, and her memory deserves better than what Trent tried to do. I stayed for another hour, walked every floor, checked every detail, remembered every crisis, every victory, every impossible night that somehow became morning. This was what I'd built. This was what Trent had dismissed. This was what he'd never understand. When I got home, there was a car parked across the street, just sitting there, engine off, someone in the driver's seat. I pulled into my driveway, watched the car in my rearview mirror. After a moment, it started up and drove away slowly. I got the license plate, called Cole. I've got another tail, different car this time. Send me the plate, I'll run it. I sent the photo. 5 minutes later, Cole called back. It's registered to Valerie's cousin, different one from before, name's Marcus Hewitt. He's got a record, assault, harassment, couple of restraining orders. They're escalating. Yeah, they are. I'm going to have a unit swing by your house every couple of hours tonight. If he comes back, we'll pick him up. Thanks. Kai, be careful. People this desperate do stupid things. He was right, but I was prepared for stupid. I'd been preparing since Easter. Saul filed the restraining orders on a Wednesday. All 4 of them. Trent, Valerie, Lydia, and Frank. No contact, no proximity, no communication of any kind. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, but the temporary orders went into effect immediately. Trent violated his within 6 hours. He showed up at my house, pounding on the door, screaming that I was ruining his life. Neighbors called the police. He was arrested for violating a restraining order before the ink was even dry on the paperwork. Bond was set at $5,000. He couldn't pay it. Valerie couldn't pay it. Her parents couldn't pay it. He spent 3 nights in jail. When he got out, Valerie left him. I know because she sent me an email. Subject line, "This is your fault." The message was long, pages of blame. How I'd poisoned their marriage, how I'd sabotaged their future, how I was a vindictive monster who couldn't stand to see his son happy. I forwarded it to Saul without reading past the first paragraph. His response, "This is evidence of continued harassment. I'm adding it to the file. The restraining order hearing happened on a Monday. I showed up with Saul, 3 boxes of evidence, video footage, text messages, financial records, police reports, medical documents. Trent showed up alone. No Valerie, no her parents. Just him, wearing a wrinkled shirt and the look of someone who hadn't slept in days. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Hollis, 20 years on the bench, reputation for being fair but hard. She looked at both sides. "Counselor, you're representing the petitioner?" Saul stood. "Yes, Your Honor, Saul Mercer for Kai Dornell." "And the respondents?" Trent stood awkwardly. "I'm representing myself, Your Honor, my wife, ex-wife, and her parents. They're not here." "They didn't see the point of showing up to a restraining order hearing against them?" "They think this whole thing is just my dad being vindictive." "I see. Well, their absence will be noted." She looked at the file. "Let's begin. Mr. Mercer, you may present your case." Saul showed the video of the wine glass being thrown. The judge watched without expression. "The ER report indicates 6 stitches were required," Saul said. "The police report indicates Mrs. Valerie Dornell was arrested and charged with assault." He continued with the harassment evidence. The texts, the photos of them trying to move in, the hired tail, Trent's violation of the temporary order. Each piece of evidence shows a pattern of systematic harassment and intimidation, Saul concluded. Judge Hollis looked at Trent. "Mr. Dornell, do you dispute any of this?" Trent stood. His voice shook. "Your Honor, I don't dispute the facts. But there's context. My father has been punishing me for years because I blamed him for my mother's accident. This isn't about protection. This is about revenge. Did you or did you not promise your in-laws they could move into your father's home without his permission? Trent hesitated. I thought he would agree if I explained. That's not what I asked. Did you promise them access to property you don't own? Yes, but did you or did you not violate the temporary restraining order? I was trying to talk. Mr. Dornell, I've watched the police body cam footage. You were screaming threats. That's threatening behavior. She looked at her notes. I'm also seeing fraud charges, embezzlement charges pending against the other respondents. This isn't a simple family dispute. She read in silence. The courtroom was quiet. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Trent Dornell, approach the bench. Trent walked forward slowly. I want you to understand something, Judge Hollis said. Your father has presented overwhelming evidence of harassment, intimidation, and threatening behavior. You've attempted to claim property that isn't yours. You've violated a court order within hours of receiving it. Your Honor, he's my father. Being someone's father doesn't make them your property. It doesn't make their home yours, she paused. I'm granting the restraining orders, and it's all 4 respondents. 1 year minimum. No contact, no proximity within 500 yards. If you violate again, you'll face criminal contempt charges and significantly more jail time. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. The gavel came down. Trent walked out. Didn't look at me, just walked out like a ghost. Saul packed up our evidence. You're protected now, legally, for a full year. I drove home alone. When I got back, I sat in the driveway for a long time, just looking at my house, still mine, still protected, still standing. That evening, I got a text from Cole. Heard the hearing went well. Proud of you, man. I didn't respond. Just sat there, drinking coffee, feeling something that wasn't quite victory but wasn't quite relief either. Maybe it was just exhaustion. The restraining order hearing happened on a Monday morning in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and broken families. I showed up with Saul at 8:30. We had 3 boxes of evidence, video footage burned onto discs, printed text messages in chronological order, financial records showing Trent's pattern of irresponsibility and my systematic removal of support, police reports from Easter, from the parking garage confrontation, from the jail violation. Every document indexed, every piece of evidence tagged. Saul had spent the weekend organizing it like he was preparing for trial, even though this was just a hearing. Overkill is underrated, he told me as we set up at our table. Judges appreciate thoroughness. Shows were serious. Trent showed up at 8:50, alone, no Valerie, no her parents, just him, wearing a wrinkled shirt and the look of someone who hadn't slept in days. He saw me. Our eyes met for a moment, his filled with something I couldn't quite name. Rage, despair, both. Then he looked away. At 9 o'clock, the bailiff called the case. Dornell versus Dornell and others. Petition for restraining orders. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Hollis. I'd looked her up. 20 years on the bench. Reputation for being fair but hard. No patience for nonsense. She looked at both sides of the courtroom. Counselor, you're representing the petitioner? Saul stood. Yes, Your Honor. Saul Mercer for Kai Dornell. And the respondents? Trent stood awkwardly. I'm representing myself, Your Honor. My wife, ex-wife, and her parents, they're not here. They said they didn't see the point. Judge Hollis's eyebrow raised. They didn't see the point of showing up to a restraining order hearing against them? They think this whole thing is just my dad being vindictive. I see. Well, they can think what they want. But this is a legal proceeding, and their absence will be noted. She looked down at the file in front of her. Let's begin. Mr. Mercer, you may present your case. Saul stood. Calm, professional, devastating. He started with Easter, showed the video of the wine glass being thrown. The judge watched without expression as Valerie wound up and let it fly, as the glass shattered against my forehead, as a thin line of red began to appear. The ER report indicates 6 stitches were required, Saul said, passing up documents. The police report indicates Mrs. Valerie Dornell was arrested and charged with assault. She posted bail, and the criminal case is still pending. Judge Hollis made a note. Saul continued. Following this incident, the respondents engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation. He presented the text from Valerie's parents demanding entry to Mr. Dornell's home, the photos of them showing up with suitcases, the video of them trying to move in without permission. Then came the hired tail, photos of the cousin's car, the recording of me confronting him after he crashed, his signed statement admitting Valerie had paid him to follow me. This escalated to Mr. Trent Dornell violating the temporary restraining order within hours of it being served. He appeared at the petitioner's home, pounded on the door, screamed threats, and had to be physically removed by police. He spent 3 days in custody as a result. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer. Methodical. Undeniable. Judge Hollis looked at Trent. "Mr. Dornell, do you dispute any of this?" Trent stood. His voice shook. "Your Honor, I don't dispute the facts. But there's context. My father has been punishing me for years because I blamed him for my mother's accident. When I finally found happiness with my wife, he couldn't stand it. He destroyed my marriage, my finances, everything. This isn't about protection. This is about revenge. Did you or did you not promise your in-laws they could move into your father's home without his permission?" Trent hesitated. I believed he would agree if I just explained. "That's not what I asked. Did you promise them access to property you don't own?" "Yes, but did you or did you not violate the temporary restraining order by going to his home and threatening him?" "I wasn't threatening. I was trying to talk." "Mr. Dornell, I've watched the police body cam footage. You were screaming that he'd ruined your life and demanding he fix it. That's threatening behavior." She looked down at her notes again. "I'm also seeing evidence of financial fraud, disability fraud, and embezzlement charges pending against the other respondents. This isn't a simple family dispute. This is a pattern of entitled behavior that escalated to criminal conduct." She flipped through more pages. Read in silence. The courtroom was absolutely quiet except for the rustling of paper. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Trent Dornell approached the bench. Trent walked forward, slowly, like a man approaching execution. "I want you to understand something," Judge Hollis said. Her voice was firm, but not unkind. "Your father has presented overwhelming evidence that you and your associates have engaged in harassment, intimidation, and threatening behavior. You've attempted to claim property that isn't yours. You've enlisted others to surveil and intimidate him. You've violated a court order within hours of receiving it. Your Honor, he's my father. Being someone's father doesn't make them your property. It doesn't make their home yours. And it certainly doesn't give you the right to harass them when they set boundaries." She paused. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen a lot of family disputes. This one is unusual because the evidence is so one-sided. Usually both parties share some blame. Here, I see a man who worked his entire life, built something substantial, and is now being targeted by family members who feel entitled to it without having earned it." Trent's face crumpled. "Please, Your Honor. I'm granting the restraining orders, all 4 respondents, 1 year minimum, no contact of any kind, no proximity within 500 yards, no third-party contact. If you need to communicate regarding legal matters, it goes through attorneys only." She signed the orders. "Mr. Trent Dornell, I'm also noting your violation in my order. If you violate again, you'll face criminal contempt charges and significantly more jail time. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." The restraining orders against Valerie Dornell, Lydia Mallow, and Frank Mallow are granted in absentia. They'll be served within 24 hours. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down. Trent stood there for a moment, then he turned and walked out. Didn't look at me, didn't say anything, just walked out like a ghost. Saul started packing up our evidence. "That went better than I expected. Did it?" "Kai, the judge could have gone either way on some of this. Family cases are unpredictable." But she saw exactly what we showed her. A pattern of predatory behavior disguised as family concern. He closed the last box. "You're protected now, legally, for a full year." We walked out of the courthouse into bright autumn sunshine, the kind of day that makes you forget how cold it gets at night. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now? You live your life. They live theirs. And if they're smart, they learn from this. And if they're not smart, then they violate the orders and end up in jail, but that's their choice." I drove home alone. Took the long way, past the hotel, past Morgan's grave, past all the places that meant something. When I got back to my house, I sat in the driveway for a long time, just looking at it. This house I'd bought with money earned one night shift at a time. This space they'd tried to claim as their own, still mine, still protected, still standing. I went inside, made coffee, sat at my kitchen table where a wine glass had been thrown months ago. My phone buzzed, text from Cole. "Heard the hearing went well. Proud of you, man." Another text from Rita at the hotel. "Mr. Dornell, heard through the grapevine you got the restraining orders. Good. You deserved peace." I didn't respond to either. Just sat there, drinking coffee, feeling something that wasn't quite victory but wasn't quite relief either. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe it was the realization that winning feels a lot like losing when the prize is just being left alone. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out old photo albums, the kind with actual printed photos behind plastic sheets. There were pictures of Trent as a baby, as a toddler, as a kid learning to ride a bike, Morgan and me on our wedding day, the three of us at the hotel's grand opening, all these moments frozen in time, before everything went wrong, before blame became currency, before family became warfare. I closed the album, put it back on the shelf. Some things are better left in the past. 3 weeks after the restraining order hearing, everything finally collided. It was a quiet Saturday morning. I was in my garage working on the old motorcycle I'd been restoring. Radio low, cool autumn air drifting in when I heard several cars pull up. Doors slammed. I looked up. Trent, Valerie, Lydia, and Frank walked toward me like they were storming a battlefield. I set down my wrench, stood, wiped my hands. They stopped in the doorway, already violating the restraining order. "We need to talk," Trent said. "No, you need to leave." "We don't care anymore," Valerie said, looking hollow and exhausted. "You've ruined us. Our marriage, our money, our future." "I protected myself," I replied. "You attacked," Frank snapped, already smelling like vodka. "That Easter dinner was a setup." "Easter dinner was fine until your daughter threw a wine glass at my head." Lydia's voice broke. "We're losing everything. Investigators, lawyers, charges. Frank could go to prison. Valerie's facing embezzlement. This is all because of you." "No, because of your actions. I just told the truth to the right people." Trent stepped closer, eyes wet. "You're my father. You're supposed to help me." "Children earn help," I said evenly. "I gave you chances. You threw them away because I wasn't there one night 3 years ago." "She's gone," he yelled. "And I was at the hospital. I handled all the arrangements for her farewell on my own. I've lived with that guilt every day. But that doesn't give you the right to destroy me." "You owe us," Valerie screamed. "I owe you nothing. While you were plotting to take my house, I was documenting everything. While you thought I was too old and guilty to fight, I was preparing." "You're proud of this?" Trent whispered. "I'm proud I survived." Silence fell, only the quiet radio playing an old Eagles song. I opened a drawer, took out a folder, and laid the documents out one by one. "Trent, your job violations, your gambling debt, the money you blew that I co-signed for, your messages claiming my house was basically ours already." I turned to Valerie. "Video of you intentionally throwing that glass. Records of your embezzlement. Small amounts, many times. Coworkers' statements about you bragging you could manipulate Trent." Then to Lydia and Frank. "Your disability fraud. 17 months of benefits while Frank worked under the table. IRS records showing 4 years of false filings. The workbench filled with their lies. This is who you are," I said. "You bet I was too weak to fight." I looked each of them in the eye. "You bet wrong." Valerie's voice shook. "We'll go to the press. We'll expose you." "Please do," I said. "Every piece of evidence is backed up and filed. Every threat, every lie, every document." I lifted my phone. "My lawyers would love a defamation case." Frank lunged toward me. I saw it coming. Stepped aside. He crashed into the workbench. Tools scattered. The sound of metal hitting concrete echoed through the garage. Trent grabbed his arm, pulled him back. "Stop. Just stop." But Frank wasn't done. He turned, face purple with rage and alcohol, and shouted, "You think you're so perfect. You think you're so smart. But you're just a lonely old man who pushed away his own son, who spent so much time making money that he let his wife get taken. You're going to end your days alone in this house you love so much." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But I'll reach the end with my dignity. I'll reach the end knowing I earned what I have. I'll reach the end knowing I didn't take from anyone. I'll reach the end with my conscience clear." "Your conscience?" Frank laughed. A ugly, harsh sound. "Your wife is rotting in the ground because you couldn't be bothered to pick her up. And you talk about conscience?" Something snapped inside me. Not my temper. Something colder. Something final. "Get out," I said. My voice was flat. "Get out of my garage. Get out of my property. Get out of my life. All of you." Lydia started crying. Real tears this time. Not performative. The kind that comes when you realize you've lost. "Please. We'll lose everything. The house. The savings. Everything. Can't you understand that? We're going to lose everything." "You already lost it. You lost it when you decided my home was yours to plan for. When you decided my life was currency. When you decided that family meant ownership instead of respect." "We're sorry." She reached toward me. "Please, we're sorry. We'll stop. We'll leave you alone. Just please help us." "No, you're not. You're just sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did. If you'd succeeded, if I'd rolled over and let you move in, you'd be in my house right now, thinking you'd won, thinking you were clever. Trent collapsed. Actually collapsed. His knees hit the concrete hard. I heard the impact, saw him crumple like someone had cut his strings. Dad, please, I'm begging you. Please stop this. Please make it stop. I looked down at him. My son. The baby I'd held in the hospital 34 years ago. The kid who'd cried when he scraped his knee. The teenager who'd asked me to teach him to drive. The man who'd blamed me for 3 years and tried to steal my home. I can't stop what's already in motion. The investigations, the charges, the consequences. Those aren't mine to control. I didn't create them. I just made sure they were seen. I didn't file the fraud charges against your in-laws. The IRS did. I didn't charge Valerie with embezzlement. Her former employer did. I didn't make you violate a restraining order. You did that yourself. You could make it stop. You could talk to them. You could tell them it was all a misunderstanding. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, calculated, planned, and lying to investigators would make me an accessory. I shook my head. I'm not going down with you. Valerie pulled Trent up. Her grip was hard on his arm. Her face was stone. All emotion burned away. We're done. We're leaving, and we're never coming back. Good. She looked at me with pure hatred. I hope you choke on your victory. This isn't victory. This is survival. They started walking away. Valerie and Trent first, her parents following. All 4 of them broken, defeated, destroyed. At the edge of the garage, Trent turned back. One last time. I'll never forgive you for this. I know, and I've accepted that. They got in their cars. Engines started. Tires crunched on gravel. I watched them drive away. Then I pulled out my phone, called 911. I need to report a restraining order violation. 4 people, all of them subject to active orders. They were on my property for approximately 15 minutes. I have video evidence. The operator took my information. Dispatch was sent. Officers would be by within the hour to take my statement and collect the video. I hung up, looked at my garage. Tools scattered from where Frank had crashed into the workbench. Papers everywhere. The motorcycle still partially disassembled on its stand. Evidence of the storm that had just passed through. I started cleaning up. 1 tool at a time, 1 paper at a time. Putting everything back in order. The radio was still playing. Some Tom Petty song about not backing down. I turned it up, just a little, and kept working.